Alright, so yesterday we were reviewing our special right triangles, but I had them separated. Right, the front side was 45, 45, 90 only, and the back side was 30, 60, 90. Now we're going to do the same, but it's not separated, they're mixed. So as we see the find the missing side length, leave your answers as radicals in simplest form. Let me take the instructions out. Question number 1, as a reminder, I multiply the side, I multiply by radical 2 to get to the hypotenuse. So if I'm going backwards, I will divide. But the way I would recommend you guys solve the questions, like if I'm going to solve for x, first write the number that you have, 10 radical 2. Then figure what to do with it. Since we're going to divide by radical 2, I'm going to say divide by radical 2. And then work. I notice the radicals cancel out, so I only get 10. And for y, I get 10, right? The same number. Always write down the number that you have, and then figure what to do with it. For me to solve for a, on question number 2, for me to solve for a, let me write the number 3 radical 2 over 2. Like I said, write down what you have, and then figure what to do with it. From the small side, bless you. From the small side to the hypotenuse, I know I multiplied by 2. Once again, I wrote down what I have and then figure what to do with it. I can multiply 2 times 3 and then divide it by 2, but instead, I'm going to cancel out my 2's to make it easier. So I'm going to call this 3 radical 2 for A. For B, write down what you have, 3 radical 2 over 2. Write down what you have, then figure what to do with it. From the small side to that side, multiply by radical 3. So on the top, I have 3 radical 6. At the bottom, I have 2. Little recap. On the 45, 45, 90s, let's say these two angles are the same. The two sides, I'm going to call them x, they are the same. So I'm going to do a little recap. For me to go to the hypotenuse, if I'm going from the small side to the hypotenuse, I multiply by radical 2. If I'm going backwards, obviously divide. So this, I recommend you guys put it on your notebook. Not on the worksheet, because you guys turn in the worksheet and I never give it back. But the notebook, you guys keep it. So on the 45, 45, 90, those two sides are equal. To go to the hypotenuse, you multiply by radical 2. To go back, you divide by radical 2. On the 30, 60, 90, you start from the small side. It could be x. That's what you want to start from. To go to the hypotenuse, you multiply by 2. To go to the other side, you multiply by radical 3. As long as you start from the small side, you always multiply. If you're going backwards, obviously divide. Do notice that there's no connection between this side and the hypotenuse. You have to go through the small side first.
So if you're going backwards, you divide by radical 2?
Yeah, if you were going from here to the small side, you will divide by radical 3. Like I said, as long as you start from the small side, you always multiply. And then another thing, as a little thing to help you guys out, the hypotenuse, they have a 2. Whichever rule you're using. If you're using 45, 45, 90, it's a radical 2. If you're using the 30, 60, 90, it's a 2. No radical, just a 2. Alright, so now having that said, let's take a look at 6. Lacey, I think you had a question. Let me do 6 and I'll come back to you. So for question number 6, I know so 45, 45, 90, the two sides are equal. So y is 10. I know for me to get to the hypotenuse, I multiply by radical 2. So I'm going to write 10. Like I said, write down the number you have, 10. Now I'm going to go times radical 2. Since they cannot be combined, that's it.
Can you do number 4?
Number 4. if I had started from the side to get to the hypotenuse, I know I multiply by radical 2. Since I'm going backwards, let me write my 8 first. And I know in this case, I have to divide by radical 2. Because I'm going backwards, so I divide. No radicals at the bottom, so multiply top and bottom by radical 2. So I have 8 radical 2 over 2, better known as 4 radical 2. And for m, I get 4 radical 2. Lacey, you're good? Okay. This one we divide by radical 2 because it's a 45, 45, 90. Okay. Yes. 5. Okay, so now this one is a 30, 60, 90. So from the hypotenuse, right, the biggest side, to go to wide, let me write down first full radical 3 over 3. Let me write down my number first. I know this case I have to divide by 2. When we divide, we put the number at the bottom. You can simplify the 4 over 2. So I'm going to call this 2 radical 3 over 3. That's y. Right? 2 radical 3 over 3. I divided by 2. To get to x, I have to start with the small side, which is that. Right? Write down what you have, then figure what to do. To get to this side, I have to multiply by radical 3. If you multiply the radicals, that becomes a whole number. So that's 3. So I have 3 times 2, so I'm going to call it 6 over 3, better known as 2. From the small side to the hypotenuse, multiply by 2. Obviously, backwards, you divide by 2. From the small side to the other side, multiply by radical 3. Any other questions? No question? Okay. Let me take roll really quick.